What happens when a man rises from poverty to fame only to lose everything in a single horrifying moment? When the world watches every step, every mistake, every tear, and justice itself seems to split the nation in two? This is not just the story of O.J. Simpson. It is the story of how glory, obsession, love, violence, and power collided, and how one night changed American history forever. Orenthal James Simpson was born in 1947 in San Francisco, California, a city of beauty but also deep inequality. His childhood did not begin with comfort or stability. It began in cramped apartments, broken sidewalks, and streets where survival mattered more than dreams. O.J.'s parents separated when he was young, leaving his mother to raise 4 children on her own. Money was always short, stress was always present, and danger was never far away. As a child, O.J. suffered from rickets, a disease that weakened his legs so badly that doctors feared he might never walk properly again. For years, he wore leg braces, slow, painful reminders that life had already chosen hardship for him. But even then, something inside him refused to break. He learned to endure pain quietly, to smile through struggle, and to run, first as therapy, later as escape. The streets around him were unforgiving. Many of his childhood friends drifted into gangs and crime. At one point, O.J. himself came dangerously close to that life. He joined a gang briefly, testing the edge of a future that could have destroyed him. But fate intervened, in the form of sports. A local youth counselor noticed his speed, unnatural, explosive, effortless. When O.J. ran, it was as if the ground couldn't hold him. Football became his refuge. The field was the only place where his past didn't matter. His braces, his poverty, his fear, all disappeared when he held the ball. Coaches quickly realized they weren't watching an ordinary athlete. They were watching something rare, something electric. At Galileo High School, O.J. became a star, and for the first time in his life, doors began to open. College scouts followed. He eventually transferred to the University of Southern California, USC, where his talent exploded onto the national stage. Stadiums roared his name. Cameras followed his every move. He won the Heisman Trophy in 1968, one of the highest honors in college football. The boy who once struggled to walk now outran everyone in America. The NFL came next. Drafted by the Buffalo Bills, O.J. Simpson transformed professional football. His speed, power, and vision made him unstoppable. In 1973, he rushed for over 2,000 yards in a single season, a breakthrough achievement. He smiled for commercials. He shook hands with celebrities. He became O.J., not just an athlete, but a brand. To the public, he was charming, polite, safe. He crossed racial boundaries in an era still deeply divided. White audiences embraced him, advertisers trusted him, Hollywood welcomed him. After retiring from football, he transitioned into acting, appearing in movies and television shows. He was everywhere, and he seemed untouchable. But behind the smile, behind the fame, something darker simmered. O.J. craved control. He feared abandonment, and he carried wounds from his childhood that success could never fully heal. In 1977, he met Nicole Brown, a young, beautiful woman who would soon become the center of his emotional universe. Their relationship burned fast, passionate, intense, and unstable. They married. They had children. From the outside, they looked perfect, but inside the walls of their home, the truth was far more troubling. Arguments turned volatile. Jealousy turned obsessive. Police were called multiple times for domestic disturbances. Nicole lived in fear, while O.J. lived in denial. And still, the world saw none of it. To America, O.J. Simpson was a hero, a success story, proof that anyone could rise above hardship. No one imagined that everything, his fame, his legacy, his freedom, was racing toward a single night in June 1994, a night that would stop the world and expose the fragile line between greatness and destruction. By the early 1980s, O.J. Simpson had everything most people only dream of: fame, wealth, admiration, and a beautiful family. Yet beneath the polished image was a relationship slowly collapsing under pressure. Nicole Brown Simpson was young when she married O.J., and over time, the gap between who he was in public and who he was at home grew wider, darker, more frightening. O.J. was controlling. He wanted to know where Nicole was at all times, who she spoke to, what she wore. His jealousy was relentless. When he felt ignored or challenged, his temper ignited. Friends noticed bruises. Neighbors heard screams. Police reports piled up. Calls in the middle of the night. Officers responding to domestic violence complaints. Nicole crying. O.J. calm, smiling, convincing. In 1989, one incident stood out. Police arrived to find Nicole battered and terrified. Photographs documented her injuries. O.J. pleaded no contest to spousal abuse. The public barely reacted. His fame acted like armor. Consequences were light. Warnings were ignored. And the cycle continued. Nicole eventually divorced O.J. in 1992, hoping distance would bring safety. But separation did not end the control. O.J. remained fixated. He followed her. He confronted men she dated. He called constantly. Nicole confided in friends that she was afraid, deeply afraid, that O.J. would kill her. At the same time, O.J.'s career was fading. He was no longer the unstoppable athlete or rising Hollywood star. He felt replaced, forgotten, powerless. And that feeling haunted him. To a man who built his identity on dominance and admiration, losing control was unbearable. June 12, 1994 began like any other Sunday. Nicole attended her daughter's dance recital. O.J. was there too. Witnesses noticed tension. Later that evening, Nicole returned to her home in Brentwood. She never knew it would be her last night alive. Sometime after 10 p.m., Nicole Brown Simpson and her friend Ron Goldman were brutally murdered outside her home. The scene was horrifying. Blood everywhere, violence beyond comprehension. The brutality suggested rage, personal, intimate. When police arrived, evidence quietly began pointing in one direction: a bloody glove, footprints, drops of blood leading away from the scene. And soon, suspicion fell on the one man no one believed capable of such violence: O.J. Simpson. The following day, O.J. was asked to surrender to police. He agreed, then vanished. What followed became one of the most surreal moments in television history. A white Ford Bronco crawling down the freeway, police cars following behind, helicopters above, broadcasting live to millions. America stopped. Schools paused. Workplaces fell silent. Everyone watched as O.J., once a hero, fled from justice. Inside the Bronco, he held a gun to his head, threatening suicide. His friend Al Cowlings drove, slowly, endlessly, as the nation held its breath. That chase was more than a spectacle. It was the moment the illusion shattered. O.J. Simpson was no longer just a celebrity. He was the center of a murder investigation, and the world would soon witness every painful detail. And the trial was just beginning. When O.J. Simpson was arrested, America divided almost instantly. Lines were drawn, not just around guilt or innocence, but around race, power, and trust in the justice system. The courtroom became a battlefield, and the trial became a cultural war. Prosecutors believed they had overwhelming evidence. DNA testing, still new to the public, linked O.J.'s blood to the crime scene. Blood from Nicole and Ron appeared in O.J.'s car, on his socks, inside his home. A matching glove was found at his estate. To the prosecution, the case seemed airtight. But O.J.'s defense team was extraordinary. Known as the Dream Team, it included some of the most aggressive and skilled attorneys in America. Their strategy was clear. Don't just fight the evidence, attack the system. They argued police corruption. They highlighted racist remarks made by Detective Furman. They suggested evidence had been planted. They turned the trial into something bigger than murder, something symbolic. Every moment played out on television. Witnesses became celebrities. Arguments became headlines. The courtroom felt less like a place of justice and more like a stage. Then came the moment that changed everything: the glove. Prosecutors asked O.J. to try on a bloody leather glove believed to be worn during the murders. Cameras zoomed in. The room fell silent. O.J. struggled, tugged, grimaced. The glove appeared too small. The defense seized the moment. If it doesn't fit, you must acquit. Those words echoed across America. Doubt crept into the jury's mind. Logic gave way to uncertainty. Science battled emotion. And the truth became harder to see. The trial dragged on for months. Every detail dissected, every mistake magnified. When closing arguments ended, the nation waited. And on October 3, 1995, the verdict arrived. What happens when an entire nation holds its breath and the answer it hears feels completely wrong to half the country? On October 3, 1995, millions of Americans paused their lives at the exact same moment. Schools turned on televisions, offices fell silent, courtrooms emptied into hallways. All eyes were fixed on one room, one jury, one verdict. Inside the courtroom, the air was heavy. O.J. Simpson sat still, expression controlled, hands folded. Across the room, the families of Nicole Brown Simpson and Ron Goldman sat quietly, already exhausted by months of emotional torture. No one spoke, no one moved. When the jury entered, it felt like time slowed down, stretched, and then stopped completely. The foreperson stood, the judge nodded, and then the words were spoken: "Not guilty." The sound was small, almost soft, but its impact was enormous. In some parts of the country, cheers erupted. People hugged. Some cried tears of relief. In other places, the reaction was shock, disbelief, anger. Many simply stared at the screen, unable to process what they had just heard. O.J. Simpson closed his eyes briefly. He exhaled. He was free. No prison, no handcuffs, no conviction. His defense team smiled, embraced him, celebrated a legal victory that would be discussed for generations. But just a few feet away, devastation unfolded. Nicole's family wept openly. Ron Goldman's parents sat frozen, their faces hollow. For them, the verdict didn't feel like justice. It felt like abandonment, like their loved ones had been erased a second time. Outside the courthouse, the divide became visible. Some crowds celebrated loudly, waving signs and chanting O.J.'s name. Others protested, holding photos of Nicole and Ron, demanding accountability. America wasn't just divided by opinion, it was divided by pain, history, and trust. For many Black Americans, the verdict carried a deeper meaning. Decades of police brutality, wrongful convictions, and systemic racism had created deep wounds. To them, the trial wasn't only about murder, it was about a system finally being challenged. The exposure of racist language by Detective Mark Furman mattered. The possibility of planted evidence mattered. The acquittal felt like resistance. For many others, especially the victims' families and their supporters, the evidence had seemed overwhelming. Blood drops, DNA matches, a history of domestic violence. They believed fame, money, and legal manipulation had defeated truth. The justice system, in their eyes, had failed catastrophically. Television networks ran non-stop coverage. Experts argued, psychologists analyzed, politicians commented. Dinner tables became battlegrounds. Friendships fractured. The verdict didn't bring closure. It reopened wounds America didn't know how to heal. O.J. Simpson walked out of the courtroom a free man, but the life waiting for him outside was not the one he had known before. The cheers were mixed with hatred, the admiration with suspicion. His name was no longer associated with football greatness, but with blood, controversy, and unanswered questions. The criminal trial was over, but the story was far from finished. Can a man walk free from a murder trial and still lose everything that once made him powerful? After the criminal verdict shocked the world, many believed O.J. Simpson had escaped justice forever. But quietly, away from the flashing cameras, another courtroom was preparing to deliver a different kind of judgment. In 1997, the families of Nicole Brown Simpson and Ron Goldman returned to court. This time, it wasn't about sending a man to prison. It was about responsibility, about accountability, about telling the story one more time without the noise of celebrity worship. The civil trial felt different. There were no cheers outside, no dramatic celebrations. The mood was heavier, more focused, more human. Jurors weren't asked to decide beyond all doubt. They were asked something simpler and perhaps more powerful. Was O.J. Simpson responsible? Day after day, evidence was revisited. The blood trails, the timeline, the violence. Nicole's history of fear, her repeated calls to police, her bruises, her diary entries. The jury heard how she had warned friends she believed O.J. would kill her one day. Those words hung in the courtroom, haunting, impossible to ignore. This time, the defense couldn't distract as easily. There was no grand performance, no heroic framing, just facts and consequences. When the verdict came, it landed with quiet force. O.J. Simpson was found responsible for the deaths of Nicole Brown Simpson and Ron Goldman. The court ordered him to pay $33.5 million in damages. It wasn't handcuffs, but it was a public declaration, a statement that the truth, at least in this courtroom, had finally surfaced. For the families, it wasn't closure, but it was validation. Someone had listened. Outside the courtroom, public opinion shifted sharply. Supporters grew silent. Defenders disappeared. The protection that fame once provided cracked completely. Financial collapse followed. O.J.'s wealth drained away under legal costs and civil penalties. He sold off personal possessions, football trophies, awards, memorabilia, pieces of his identity stripped away one by one. The man who once symbolized success now struggled to maintain relevance. Hollywood erased him. Friends vanished. Invitations stopped coming. He lived increasingly isolated, surrounded by bitterness and denial. Instead of accepting responsibility, O.J. became defiant. He spoke as though he were the victim. In 2007, he released a book titled If I Did It. Marketed as a hypothetical account, it described how the murders could have happened. To the public, it felt like cruelty, like arrogance, like a confession hidden behind a smirk. Outrage exploded again. That same year, desperate and angry, O.J. traveled to Las Vegas. Believing that sports memorabilia stolen from him was being sold, he led a group of men into a hotel room, armed. Voices rose, fear spread. Police intervened. This time, there was no escape. In 2008, O.J. Simpson was sentenced to prison. The man who once outran everyone on the field had finally run out of road.
How does history remember a man like O.J. Simpson? Is he the boy who overcame poverty and illness, the football legend who rewrote record books, or the face of a crime that shattered trust in justice itself? The truth is, he became all of it. Years passed, but the case never faded. It evolved. Documentaries re-examined the evidence. Podcasts dissected every detail. Law schools turned the trial into a lesson on strategy, race, and media influence. New generations learned the story not as news, but as a warning. In 2017, after serving 9 years in prison for the Las Vegas robbery, O.J. Simpson was granted parole. When he walked free, the cameras returned, but the applause did not. He was older, slower, his voice softer. The power that once surrounded him was gone. He tried to present a normal life, casual videos, smiles, short comments, but nothing could erase the past. Every appearance reopened old wounds. Every word reminded the world of what was lost. Nicole Brown Simpson's story gained new meaning over time. She became a symbol of ignored warning signs, of domestic violence dismissed as private matters, of a woman who asked for help again and again and was not protected. Her life changed conversations around abuse forever. Ron Goldman became more than a name in headlines. He became a reminder of innocence destroyed, a young man with dreams taken simply because he happened to be there. His family's grief never softened, never faded. The O.J. Simpson case exposed uncomfortable truths: how fame can bend reality, how money can shape outcomes, how justice can feel different depending on who you are. It forced America to confront its deepest divisions and its own reflection. O.J.'s life began with struggle, it rose to unimaginable heights, and it collapsed under the weight of obsession, control, and violence. From a child who wore leg braces to a man defined by one night he could never escape. His name will always be spoken with hesitation, not because the story is unclear, but because it is unforgettable. And even now, decades later, the question still echoes in silence. Did justice truly win, or did it simply arrive, too late and in another form?